Hello and welcome to Man's Model Moments. A little bit earlier than usual, but then we are on a Sunday, so Maria is out seeing her friend. She'll be back in a couple of hours, so I thought, why don't I give it a go at finishing off the old XB-70. Now, I'm not sure I'm going to get it finished, but I have given myself a bit of a head start because the thing is enormous. So if you are channel members, you will have seen on the private Discord, I've been posting a few updates there. So I did get some of the trench filled, well, all of the trench filled, as much as I'm going to fill it. Anyway, let's put it that way. So for those of you who haven't seen that, just let me give you a bit of an idea what that looks like. Let's see if I can get the right ones here. If they're actually going to work. So let me present this. So this was actually the third round of filling and sanding, if you can believe it. So this ridge here at the back proved to be a bit problematic. So it was slightly above the level of this side, as you can tell by the way it's been sanded. So I had to build that up and sand it out. And these trenches did take quite a bit to fill them. So I actually used 2 rounds of sprue goo and then some of my newer sprue goo solid, which has basically calcium carbonate and talc in it to bulk it a little bit. Means it shrinks less, creates more mess when you're sanding, but you know, it's kind of trade-off. So that got us at least to a point where I could then do touch-up filling and sanding. So that got me to stop that one, show you the next one. So that got me to this point. So you can see here, I managed to get that smoothed out. And then I just need to do a couple of touch-up little bits just along the fuselage, the spine, a little bit on the canards of where the transparency came in, and that little seam at the back, which I'd kind of ignored until I'd got that main fuselage piece. If you look at those trenches, they're not perfect. There's a few little bits and stuff, but I figured once we've got the camo on, and you know, I'm not going to spend forever making this pristine, as it's a bit of fun. And that then got all sanded down. And let's present the next one. And that got us to this point, which doesn't look much different, but if you can see, we've got all of the little bits now sanded, primed. You can see here at this right-hand edge, there's a little bit that you can see which is slightly lower, but to be honest, once the paint's on, you know, we've done some weathering. I don't think that's going to be too onerous. So that's where I got to. And I then decided if I can get my StreamYard working, I then decided to map out the camouflage. So what I did is I took that photograph, put it into photo editor, and basically overlaid an F111 and did the different patches, transferred all of that across to the main Dorito V, got the 104 Starfighter and put that as the front, did the same thing. Its wings are almost the same size as the canards, actually, retrospectively, when you can sort of size it and everything. And then I couldn't help myself, so I actually started spraying, which is fine because I think most of the time here it's difficult to show on camera, to be honest. And that got us to this point. So you can see here we are. I've done the dark tan, which is actually Vallejo khaki grey. You believe it? That's one of the best matches for it's FS 30219, and that matches pretty well. It doesn't look like a khaki grey, does it? The green is actually Audic olive, and that's a Formula P3 color. So when I was talking in my video about, don't necessarily go with, model makers paints, what they say is the right color for this. Audic olive is the closest match I could get. Again, I've scanned all of these, so I know what they are in LAB values. I know what they are in the federal standard. So that is the green on there. So I've done it as a hard edge. I've masked. Oh, and of course, sorry, I forgot to say, I did mask it all. So you saw I've done the rattle can black previously. This took over a roll and a half of masking tape to get all of this. So I've done a hard edge along the fuselage, much like some aardvarks had hard edges, some had wavy edges. I decided to go with a hard edge for this one, purely because it's easier. So I've masked the canards. Here, the fuselage, I sort of tapered it in. So we'll see that when it's unmasked. You can kind of see it a little bit, but the paint's kind of obscured it. But so the last color I have to do is the dark green. The best match of which I've got is actually it is olive green XF58 from Tamiya. So that's what I'm going to be spraying next. So if I put this up just against the table, it is actually taller than the table. That gives you an idea how big it is. So I think most tabletops are about 60 centimeters tall. So that gives you an idea of how big the thing is. So yeah, 1/48 scale would be a meter, basically. All right. So make sure this is nice and mixed. Let's have a look who is in. Steve, welcome. G&A Scale Model Apprentice. Good evening. David Markey, welcome. Mark Stott, good to see you. John Alec, welcome as always. We have Hobby Time, welcome. Edward Williams, nice to see you. And ACF Nugget. I expected AFC, but ACF Nugget. Thank you very much. Evening here rather than afternoon. I think 6 o'clock is a bit late for afternoon. For us Brits anyway. And Zinzan, welcome. So let's see how this works. Or doesn't. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to show you what I'm doing. I'm going to put my keyboard down for one. I also need, I'll use this. Yeah. Just getting my pipette washed. Okay, that is working. So I decided not to go the outlaw route in the end because I did bring my mask. I have this is my chemical mask, but it's a bit difficult to talk. Well, it's not difficult to talk in it. It's difficult for anybody to understand you in it. So I thought, no, you know what? Rather than shift out some outlaw matches, I'll just go with what I've got in my collection, and we'll take it from there. So I'm going to start off with a 50-50 mix of paint to thinner here. And then I'll probably just use my webcam to kind of give you an appraisal of where I am. I did clear my desk a little bit because I've got pieces from showing you guys stuff last time, which I haven't changed. Oh, I did mask and spray wheels. They do need touching up. I'll show you how I did that. I haven't done the aluminium ones, just the main. Oh, not sure what happened there. It's handy that one isn't done, because that means I can show you. Okay, let's try and get this sort of down onto the desk area a little bit. And maybe you can see what I'm doing. Probably not like that, actually. Okay, there we go. I think that's how I'm going to do it. So to start with, I'm just looking at demarking the areas rather than getting even coverage. So don't judge me too harshly. But that's kind of how it's looking in terms of the color, which I think is not bad, actually. That's kind of the effect I was going for. So So the most difficult color here actually is the Nordic olive, because the coverage is, because it's quite a light color. It's difficult because obviously the first color, oh God, trying to manipulate this is absolutely dreadful with one hand. Trying to get this round so you can see what I just did there, just the third color on the vertical stabilizer there. So in terms of the demarcation, I actually did pencil line this to start with. And then went over that with the paint. Rather than masking, and I thought freehanding it is probably a better idea. I have masked these sort of hinge pieces, the cover pieces for the mechanisms there as well. And this is the Gallery. Oops, I've just spilt paint on the wing there. There we go, that wasn't too disastrous there. So yeah, this is the Gallery. Is it the Gallery? Or is this the Fender I'm using? I can't remember. No, this is the Gallery. With the 0.38 nozzle, I believe. So as I spilt that paint there, I'll just extend that dark green a little bit. Just to cover up the mistake. There we go. So this thinner does have some retarder in it. It's got 2-butyl, 2-ethoxybutyl. Oh, I can't remember. It has a retarder in it. Because while you'll see there are patches which are drying here, and it's seeming to take quite a long time to dry. That's by design. So if you do have any questions, comments, just put them in the chat. Do put them in capitals, and obviously I'm not going to be answering questions directly whilst I'm doing this because I'm mainly looking at what I'm doing, but I'll come back to them. You'll just have to bear with me. So you can see I'm sort of lining with the airbrush quite a low paint flow, which gives me the control. And then I can come back and open it up and fill in these bigger areas, and then restrict it again to actually come back to be more precise for the edges. Now you might say, well, these big feathered edges you've got here, you know, aren't very realistic. It's like, this is a what if, guys. I quite like the way it looks, and it's completely unrealistic anyway. So I don't care. Now my compressor is going to go more than it normally would, because I am using obviously aqueous paints. And whenever you're using aqueous paints, even though this thinner has organics in it, I'm spraying Tamiya, they still require a higher PSI than lacquer paints, which typically only require sort of 10 to 12. I'm more like 15 to 20 here. I think this camo is one of those that once you've got grey on it, it looks kind of garbage. But as you start to build it up, you start to see the effect. I think it starts to come into its own. But good God, this thing is unwieldy. It really is. Let me just have a quick look at the comments, see if there's something. There's a question. Would it be possible to put together the ultimate SEA camouflage paint set using paints that are closest to the real FS and LAB values? Probably. So the reason I catalogued all my paints, and I talk about it a lot, and I reference the video that I did on it in quite a few videos myself, is because I found it really useful. Like, for instance, in this, it's been super useful. So AK do a set, for instance, of Southeast Asia camo. I have no idea how that looks because I don't have it. But I obviously have, you know, these three disparate paints from different manufacturers that, under the conditions that I scanned them, seem to produce the effect. Because bear in mind, these are the paint chips that I produce. You know, these things are the paint on a surface. You know, on and actually these show the coverage. These are Revell aqua colors, which have really good coverage, because this is on, believe it or not, that's one coat on a black, white, and grey background. You can almost see the difference as I do it in the light. I'm not sure if you can see it on this one. You kind of can. The one by my fingers is where the black is. You can see it is slightly darker. Which again, you know, shows the kind of coverage you're getting from it. But it also means I can look at any photograph. And yes, it's not going to be balanced for, you know, the camera or the monitor or anything. But if I think it looks good and I want to recreate that effect, I can recreate that effect with whatever paints I have in my collection. I don't have to buy anything more. And each time I buy a paint, I can add it into that catalog. And paint apps do a similar thing, right? So the paint apps that you got on your phone that, you know, try and show you, equivalent colors and stuff, use a similar kind of principle. The problem I have with them, and the reason I find that they're not terribly reliable between different manufacturers, is that they rely on the information that the manufacturers give them. So they don't actually like scan all the colors and stuff themselves, which means they aren't all done under the same conditions. And if anybody has ever scanned a single color more than once, you know that even using the same equipment, you can get different results slightly. You know, over 5 scans, for instance. Whereas doing it all myself, I know that it doesn't really matter. I don't have to calibrate my scanner because it's the same. If it's out by the same amount for each one. Now, if I had every single color that every manufacturer made, that would be the ultimate paint comparator, right? Not just me, if anybody did that. But currently, none of the apps do that. And I don't blame them because, you know, it would cost hundreds and hundreds of pounds to buy all those paints, or to have them, you know, you need to convince the manufacturer to send you them. Which is kind of a big ask, you know, what's the manufacturer getting out of it? Not a lot. Unless you actually do create that ultimate paint reference, and then if you're not in it, it would be a disadvantage, but you have to get to that stage. So, you know, I'm liking the way this is forming up at the moment. You know, but it does kind of work. I mean, Steve, Channel Sporter here tonight, was painting a Japanese armored car, and the instructions called for, I think it was like Tamiya Sky, which is clearly the wrong color, right? And just by looking at the box, sampling those colors on the screen, I was able to get back to him and suggest a couple of Tamiya colors, which he's braided in and looked pretty good. So, you know, the proof of any tool like this is in actually its use. Yes, there are. It's the short answer. GmbH. There are a few. As with anything, they have their advantages and disadvantages. I think Hobby Color Converter, I think, is the name of one, which is generally seems pretty good. And, you know, the reason I encourage people to use stuff like that is it exactly does give you that, a starting point, you know, and an idea. even if it's not going to be what you end up doing 100%. Good evening, Dave. Good to see you. Oh, Adrian has popped in as well. Good evening. Give you a view of the back end of the aircraft there as I'm doing the front. So you can see I've not got even paint coverage here at the moment. That's not what I was going for to start with. Not that I want it to be too even, but I don't want it to look, you know, paint uneven, if you like. I wanted to have visual interest rather than look like it's badly painted, that is, you know. Hopefully we'll get there. I've just done some bits of the front there. What you have to be mindful of is where I'm actually putting my fingers. Because this has a retarder in it, even when it looks dry, it's still not 100% hard. so difficult to actually get to handle. So yeah, a bit of a nightmare, really. Whoops, I'll do that again. Adjust that then. If anybody also has a better idea of how you can actually video spraying something this size, I'd love to hear it. Okay, I've got a little bit to do this side. Down here. Okay. A bit more here. Right. Sides here. We just run out of paint in the brush. Right. So look. Yeah, AK-3G, Air Force and A&G aircraft colors. They also, yeah, they do those AK colors generally pretty good. Yeah, Hobby Color Converter is that app on Android. I don't think it's available on iPhone. Bungiel, this isn't what I expect to see on an XB-70 stream. You haven't watched the prior ones. So this is always going to be a what if the XB-70 actually made it through to production, you know, without changing too much of the history of everything. Other than that, you know, assuming that intercontinental ballistic missiles still were in, that air defenses, you know, SAM development still happened in the same way. You know, very much like the B1 concept was changed to a low-level bomber from strategic, the same way that the F-111 operated. This is kind of what the premise is here, that the XB-70, when it became the B-70, would actually be in the low-level strike role. So here it is in Vietnam era, 3-color Southeast Asia camo scheme. Because let's face it, white's boring. I do also try and think of ways to make streams interesting for people, rather than just you know, standard kind of building streams. Hence the B26 24-hour challenge. So that's the, I'm trying to do this without stabbing myself with an XB-70 or B-70. I should call it the B-70 really. There we go. There's the side camo on that side at least. Now, where do I hold it to do the next piece? There. Yeah, fisheye lens may have been the way to go. Yes, let's pull this up, pull that down a little bit so you can see. Maybe a little bit more. As I say, I haven't really gone for even coverage yet. I want to get the main colors on to start with before I try doing that. But quite, I wasn't sure about the, was it XF58? Yeah, 58 before I started, but I actually quite like it now it's on. It has that, it's green, but next to the lighter green, it does look almost black, which, if you know the Southeast Asia scheme, was quite a feature of it. It did look like really dark, that green. Although when you get up to it, it's not actually. Build this up, it should become more even. Very nice, Alex. John Alex. It's always good to see your barbecue stuff on Facebook. Looks very yummy. Oh, thank you, Adrian. Do try. Indeed, what if schemes are great because nobody can tell you it's wrong, because it is, deliberately not factual. So it is nice to do that, and also it makes it a little bit more interesting at shows. When people see it, it's not the expected thing. So I always think that's quite a nice part. If you can get a bit of interest from people, because model shows, especially, and obviously this is going to go in the window of the shop, but anything that draws people in and gets them interested in the hobby, I think that's the point of a lot of showing models. I think when I go to model shows, I don't look at really the Spitfire Mark 9s or the ME210s or 109s or 110s, that are just there and just in normal schemes, because I've seen them a lot anyway, unless there's a particularly nice one, I'll probably pass it by. But if I see something I don't know what it is, or it's in an unusual scheme, it'll draw me in far more. So again, I think a lot of the, rivet counters, whatever you want to call them, internet warriors, they miss the point with a lot of this stuff, apart from they miss the point that the hobby's meant to be fun, As I say, I quite fancy doing this kit again, which you may call me insane because you've seen the problems I've had with it, but not as an XB-70 or a B70, but as, the XB-72 or B72, in a stealth configuration, completely hacked apart, and in really, super dark gray stroke black, typical of the B2. I think, side by side, they would look pretty cool, and certainly draw some interest at shows. And it's just really showing, I had fun with this. And also, who knows, right? Who knows what could have happened in an alternate time? Well, I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, Mario. I want to make that a bit more wavy. This camo scheme didn't have very many straight edges, so. I was concerned that I might have made this too big in terms of the camo scheme, but I think if it was smaller, it would look odd. And of course, one of the things about camo is to not draw, ironically, the exact opposite of what this aircraft at a model show will do in terms of drawing attention. Camo is meant to obfuscate and not draw attention. So I think if it was really, had a lot of intricate camo on it, it would look odd. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I'm actually quite pleased with the way that's coming out. I do need, so I made a mistake when I was putting the first camo on. See, I tell you guys because you're on the stream, but people who don't watch it will never know. So here, I actually did too much of the sand color that's meant to be, I think it's the dark, it is the dark green. I think it might be here actually. Anyway, somewhere around here, there's some more dark green that's meant to go on. So I do need to do that because I do like the way it looks, because otherwise it's just a big section which only has two colors on, which isn't really in spirit of the camo. Oh, have I just, no, I think I'm good. I think I'm good. Haven't screwed anything up yet. So let's put her down for a second. I'm not sure there's too much more I can do without potentially messing things up. Because there's lots of wet bits everywhere now. Not wet, but damp. So let me come back up here. That's not quite up. There we go. And too far up. There we go. That's about right. Right. Got that camera in the way. Yeah. So I was reading about the very first one. So ship one, the one that survived, actually had a host of problems. So it was the first prototype, and it had all kinds of problems to actually try and get it into the air. Once they eventually did get it in the air, it suffered several accidents. So the splitter plate at one point, when it was, like, I think, over Mach 1, detached and got sucked into the engines and took out like 3 of the engines, I think. Or maybe that only took out 2 engines and it was a later one. I think it was one of the higher Mach tests where, again, a splitter plate or part of a splitter plate came out and trashed 4 of the engines. For that first one, it was still able to maintain and accelerate with the remaining engines, which shows you the power of the thing. And then ship 2, actually, when they built it, was much more reliable because they used all of the knowledge that they gained from the ship 1 tests. And that was the one that got trashed, which is, unfortunate and ironic, tragic, because obviously there were deaths. But they had a lot of, I think it was, I can't remember, again, it was on ship 1, but one of the first supersonic tests they did with it, there's actually a picture of it. The paint started to strip off, and the thing looks like it's been sandblasted. It's got just like big chunks of paint missing. Vertical stabilizers like half like gone with paint back to the stainless steel. And they kept having to reapply paint, and they changed tons of stuff to get it. But I mean, I imagine the upkeep, so the museum upkeep of a lot of these things, you know, a lot of people don't think, when you're repainting, you know, or touching up a thing that size, that's a lot. That's a lot of paint. It's a lot of cost. So thanks, John Mike. It's now it's drying. I can kind of see the wood for the trees. I'm liking the effect. On camera, see if I can extricate it from all of the cables and lighting and stuff I have here. So there we go. On camera, it looks a bit more. Actually, that's not a bad. It's not a bad reproduction on camera. But you can see, look, still drying. So the dark color, you see how it's like weirdly pooled and patched? That's the retarder. So all of the colors look like that before they dried. So it will improve in appearance, just in terms of how those colors look. I need to go over the green again, because that is the thinnest of all of the coverage of the paints on that one. There we go. I like the front. That's the Starfighter camouflage coming through on that one. I like that a lot. The way that looks, the way it goes across those canards. And then F111, probably more accurate to what a bomber would be at the back there. So sides also need an extra coat, but difficult to show on stream with it being so bloody big. So yeah, it's a little bit different, isn't it? And then of course all of the mast bit at the front is black, so the nose and the anti-glare panel in front of the windscreen all black. And then again, you know, mast along here from like here, I think it is, down will be black. That's all masked off to provide a nice contrast with the, especially with like the tan, dark tan color, I think. More so, I think, than the day scheme would be. And, you know, if this thing had been around, I mean, they didn't really fly the F111s during the day. They were just too vulnerable in the end. Yeah, I'm reasonably happy with how it's gone thus far. Tomorrow should be back to 32 degrees. Wow. That's today's been a bit cooler here. It's been about 20 degrees or so. Yeah, so as Mark said, 26 degrees to 70 degrees. I'm in the southwest here. It tends to be a little bit warmer than up north. And Steve said, I hate tweezers, just had a door handle fly off to God knows where. Yeah. So that is, I'm just looking if I've got any tweezers here. But it is one of the big disadvantages of tweezers, right? It's particularly fine ones. If you can get ones with little grips on the end, you know, those are useful. But the thing is, you are putting pressure on something, and if it's small, especially round, and you don't have any grips, then, you know, you're effectively just building up, waiting for that force to overcome the friction to be shot out. I think we've all had that happen. Non-pinging tweezers. I say the ones with grips on the end are better, or can be better. You can. I always think they should put like the silicone coating that you get in kitchen stuff. You know, they just put that on the end, like a little sleeve, like a heat shrink sleeve kind of thing. That would help. But I don't know of any tweezers that actually are made like that. Thank you, Steve. Yeah, I mean, the decals on it will be fairly restrained in terms of, you know, like the F111s, they had the black only US national markings. So just the kind of black outline ones. They didn't go for the full red, white, and blues on the Southeast Asian camo bombers. So they'll be quite subtle, but I think maybe the tail flashes, I can find something that's, you know, a little bit more interesting. They generally had quite interesting ones there. Paint stripping off reminds me of the KLM Boeing 747 in the 80s, which flew at night through volcanic ash. When it landed, the paint had been sandblasted off the nose and leading edges. Yeah, yeah. And all of the turbine blades in the engines, which had to be completely refurbished. Ian, that's okay. It was earlier than normal, principally because I had a bit of time, and it means I still get to spend the evening with my girlfriend, which you know, is a win-win. And thank you for the for saying it looks good. That's always welcome too. And Dave, thank you very much. 10 no less free model. I can't even say my channel. Model Moments memberships. You are a star. Maybe I could do the blue SAC sash that you would see on the FB-111. Yeah. I'll have to have a look how easy that is. I have, I was trying to find it early, but I didn't get it in time for the stream. I have a set of decals for the F111 at various schemes. So I'm going to probably just steal it because they're for 1/72. So I will probably steal those to have a look and see what there is. So I do have a bunch of spare decals as well. And there are quite a lot of American stuff because my dad was a big fan of kind of Cold War aircraft. You know, he was a boomer, so you know, kind of makes sense. You know that you like the aircraft that he grew up with. You know, as we often do, more so than the World War II stuff. Although he did like just unusual stuff, which he passed on to me for sure. So like the Blom Voss BV 141, I think it was, the reconnaissance thing, the asymmetric entrant that the U who actually ended up winning, he liked. Stuka, because that was quite a big ugly bird. So still, you see these are still drying, which is why they look lighter. So the thinner I'm using is actually one I've made up myself. Surprise, surprise. So it's 50% water, 50% IPA, and then 50% of what's it called? 2-butoxyethanol, which is basically it's a solvent. It has really good solvation properties. It's a polar solvent, so it's miscible with water, and it has a fairly high boiling point. So most retarders, all retarders are generally things that aren't as volatile as what you're putting on. So if you're using something like IPA as a solvent, as a diluent, it'll actually speed up the drying time of what you're spraying, because obviously IPA has a pretty low boiling point. So that can lead to streakiness or like blotching, as like the paint dries very quickly. And something like 2-butoxyethanol, I think its boiling point is like 160 or 180 degrees. So it's a lot less, and it's not that volatile. So because of that, it evaporates more slowly. So it just brings the whole thing. It's a mixture, so it doesn't quite work in that. It's not an absolute. It's the mixture's volatility properties. But that is why that is taking a longer time. And the whole reason that people add this stuff, the retarders, apart from a longer working time, is that it gives the paint an extended amount of time to find its own level. That's why leveling thinners have these kind of compounds in. So yes, thank you very much for that, Dave. Sir John said, very generous. Not at all. Not at all. That's, I schedule the streams when I hope people will be available. I appreciate some people work shifts. There's different time zones, so it's impossible to catch everybody. I try to vary the times a little bit sometimes, like this one being a bit earlier on a Sunday, because that might allow people to view when they couldn't normally, and that kind of thing. Ian Ellison asks, how do I get on the Discord meetings? Oh, the secret Discord meetings. So if you remember, Ian, then there is a message in YouTube. It's like a members only. I think it's a post. I think it's on a community post, which gives the Discord details. In fact, I'll post up another one, just so that people have a recent one, don't have to go searching back. But yeah, that's just if you've got a YouTube membership. If your Patreon does the same, there's a members message which has the Discord details in there, so you can just drive. Oh, Mark Stott, silicon tip tweezers on Amazon for $5.99. Well, there you go. There's something to test out, eh? Although it depends what sort of silicon they are. I could make them more slippery or less. So yeah, I have to get some and try them out. See if see what that does. Right. So I'm not going to put any more paint on that right now, because I think I run the risk of putting my fingers where they shouldn't go and doing more damage than good. So let me just sort my airbrush out a second, because the last thing I want is to gum that up. Oh, that's a bit vigorous. Now, I always just throw this back in the pot because I've only diluted it 50%. This is less than a mil. I haven't mixed it with any other colors, so the extra little bit of solvent is not going to provide any problem at all. Julian, don't worry. I was just talking about that as so I'm cleaning my airbrush while I'm doing this, so I'm just being careful that I don't spray myself with color here. Yeah, I had it on a bit earlier because my girlfriend is visiting a friend, so she'll be back probably about the time I finish this. So I still get to spend the evening with her. I get to spend the afternoon with you guys, and also a little bit of a different time might allow different people to get the stream that wouldn't normally be able to, that are busy in the evenings or whatever. So hence the change in time. Right, I think we're all good. Spray that through. We're good. So the last thing I do whenever I clean my airbrush, this came up on Facebook recently in a group that I don't really like, but somebody asked the question, so I answered anyway, talking about how they could stop their airbrush drying out and stuff. I always put a bit of what's the word? Thinner. I always put some thinners in and just leave the thinners in the brush. If you're worried about evaporation, you can put the top on. You know, if you're somewhere warm or very what's the word? Not humid. Whatever. What's the word for not humid? Dry, I guess. Just to it just stops it drying out. So if you've got any paint which is still in, like, that you haven't managed to clean out for whatever reason, it'll just gradually dissolve into that solvent, and then next time you just backflush, push it through the brush, add a little bit more, you know, of your clean thinner, and you're good to go. So I very rarely, I won't say very rarely, but I rarely clean my airbrush, break my airbrush down completely and clean it up. When I say very rarely, it's because when I do, it's usually because I've forgotten to clean it out. So I've forgotten to clean it out, and it means I've got a load of crap in my brush that I need to sort out. So that's generally why I have to do a full breakdown of my brush rather than, you know, day-to-day build-up. So when I say it's nothing special, I usually just put a bit of thinner in there, or sometimes just, if I've been using lacquers, ethanol or IPA, you know, whichever you have. I prefer ethanol. Sorry, Pablo. Can't take him anywhere. Pablo, come here. Come and say hello to people. Come on, Pablo. Come on. What are you doing under the? Come here. Come out. No, he's off. No, he's not interested. Doesn't want to say hello. Antisocial dog. Sorry about that. As I was saying, I prefer ethanol, which is common gardener. He's just being a. You can hear another dog outside. That's what it is. Yeah, I prefer ethanol because it's a gentler solvent than IPA. IPA is quite harsh and has some insolubilities with certain things aren't as soluble in IPA as they are in ethanol. So ethyl alcohol. The difficulty is getting ethanol because in the UK, duty is charged on ethanol, even if it's like a, you know, a lab grade thing. Fortunately, I have a supplier, Maria. She can get it from Spain for nothing. It's like pharmacists there sell it for like €1 for a litre or something. So the difference between the kind of nanny state approach that we have in the UK to get extra tax and the continent where it's just like, well, this is medical alcohol. Why would anybody drink it? That's stupid. So. Anyhow, also ethanol smells nicer. You know, IPA is, you know, an IPA is, don't drink IPA. If you spray a lot with IPA as well, it's not very good. IPA, if you drink IPA, it can kill you, put you into a coma. So it's not generally poisonous, and you shouldn't drink it. And it's quite difficult to drink because it makes you sick. But yeah, I prefer to be drunk than dead. So I tend not to backflush. Okay, makes it harder to clean out paint when you do have to break it down. Each to their own. I've never had a problem with backflushing in airbrushes. I do it to mix the paint often as well. You know, if you're if your airbrush if its seals are good, you shouldn't have an issue. But I always say, if it works for you, I'm not going to tell you not to do it. So if not, but backflushing works for you, you're golden. I'm not going to say that's wrong at all. I don't personally tend to. I know people that think it's good, that think it's bad. I can only say what I do, you know. Okay. Oh, that was I backflush my airbrush twice when I clean it. No. As I say, if it's working for you, I say I backflushed my airbrush all the time, you know, and I've never had a problem. I know Fenris models doesn't like to backflush. You know, I think in general, it's difficult to really. An airbrush is a fairly simple thing. That's not to say that the technology of the engineering and stuff isn't important, or it's not a very clever device, but it's relatively simple. There are relatively few moving parts. You know, all it is you are blowing air around a needle, which can move out, and then by Venturi effect, pull paint through, which either comes from gravity feed or just is pulled up by that effect to atomize in that spray again. So it's a fairly simple concept, right? Fairly simple in terms of moving parts, but they can be very frustrating. So somebody came into the shop, a good customer, who couldn't get, they'd broken a brush down, they couldn't get this piece back in. It took me a couple of minutes because it's fiddly, right? Because they're hinged. What you have is a plunger attached to the actual, my hand is the trigger with the little trigger piece on, and it's hinged at this point. So of course, when you're putting it into the hole, which is exactly the same size as this, yeah, if you get it like a tiny bit off, it just goes like that, or like that. So it's incredibly frustrating. If you get it bang on, it goes in, and this piece moves, and you're good. But you know, the cleverness in an airbrush these days comes down to the engineering in here rather than the basic effects. So most airbrushes, I'll say most because you know there will be the errant ones which are garbage. Most are pretty good. Most seals are pretty good. They're resistant to almost all solvents, certainly the things that we're going to be using. So it's difficult. I think the back flushing, not back flushing, how you break it down, you know, it comes down to personal preference, a lot of it. Will pulling your needle this way out of the brush or that way make a difference? Maybe. Is it going to make so much difference that you have to replace these needles like 10 times as much? No. So there are best practices which, you know, in actual practice make very little difference or small amounts of difference, or mean that you may have to replace your seals, you know, once every 3 years instead of once every 5 years. I can tell you I've never replaced seals on an airbrush, ever. From wear on that. I've lost seals. You know, I have replaced seals in airbrush when I've dropped them and can't find them, you know, for my own stupid fault, but not through, you know, nefarious cleaning practices or paint use. So I would say as long as you, the important thing is keep it clean. Yeah, that's the main thing. If you keep it clean, it'll work for you. You can not keep it clean and abuse it, and it will still work for you, but you'll spend more time faffing about with it. That's the main thing. You'll spend more time taking it apart and cleaning it if you're not following best practices. So in the end, it's best to keep it clean, you know, and ready to go, because you'll spend less time in the long run. If you're just throwing it down and not really cleaning it properly, next time you come, you might get a little bit of use out of it. It might spatter, you know, and then you've got to redo your painting. So, yeah, but you pay your money, you take your choice, you know. Show dog. Pablo seems like a neighbour's dog who seems to think that if it moves, bark at it. If it doesn't move, prod it, then bark at it when it moves. Pablo is more, if he can hear it, it's a threat and he'll bark at it. And, you know, anything, he's very territorial to his space, you know, which is, you know, the garden. That is, you know, sacrosanct for him, or his pack, which is Maria and I, you know. But once he's introduced to something, so if you came around for dinner or something, go out for beers, and came back, he would hate you. I can guarantee. Especially if you're a guy, he will hate you for at least the first 20 minutes. If you give him some treats and give him attention, he's very fickle. And then he'll be like your shadow. So, yeah. Question: does backflushing make a difference between single action or double action airbrushes? No. Basically, so backflushing, what backflushing means and what it does is you're stopping off the flow of air, right, from going through the normal path. So it has to go back through where it draws the paint from normally and up into your cup. A single action airbrush has a fixed needle, right? You don't get to do this. You don't get to draw back in the same way. You press and whatever set amount you've set. Often you have a screw thread so you can adjust it, but it's not just on the fly. That's the basic difference between a single action and a dual action airbrush in its most basic form. So you're not doing anything with the paint, really, when you're backflushing. You're redirecting the flow of air. So in that sense, it doesn't make a difference whether it's single action or double action. For a point, anyone who has any airbrushing questions to Paul Budzik at Scale Model Workshop on YouTube. I'll have to check him out. Yes, I do have an airbrush cleaning service. So you can either bring them into the shop or send them in, and I'll strip it all down, clean all the components, put it all back together, and send it back. It's I think it's £20, but yeah, so it's probably worth it if you got an expensive airbrush, and if you got a cheap one, probably not so much. I didn't say that. I'm selling my own product short. It's mainly time, you know. That's the main thing. As with anything, like with cars, you know, cars, as long as you don't take the electronics, you know, at its base level, a car without its electronic brain is quite a simple mechanism. What? Are you going to come here and say hello? Pablo, are you coming here? Come on then. No? Come on. Come on. He thinks Maria's coming home. That's what it is, because he heard something outside. And he thinks she's coming home. So he's here very pensively waiting. See if I can show you. There he is. He's looking to see if Maria's coming back. He's not. It's not, Mummy. It's not. No. Come on then. Pablo. What are you doing? He's not coming up. He's out of sorts. Oh, he's absolutely a diva. He's 100% diva. Yeah. So as I say, a car is a very basic thing at its most basic level. It's quite a simple thing. You know, it's an engine which generates power, which is then transmitted through the transmission through to the wheels, which then moves the car. You know, and mechanically, you know, you can take that to pieces, relatively easy. Even if you've got no experience. I knew nothing about cars when I had a business with a couple of my friends, car business. And by the end of it, I could do pretty much anything on a car. You know, they taught me what it is. A Haynes manual, you can do pretty much everything. You catalog what you're doing, you know, photograph stuff as you're going along so you don't lose bits, put them in trays and things. It's a big Meccano set. The main thing, and the main thing with garages, you know, and people who work at garages, you know, you don't have to be a degree qualified engineer to work at a garage. I'm not saying that, you know, people who work at garages are stupid. That's not the case. But it's, you know, at its base level, it's relatively simple, you know, to take things apart methodically. There are a set of skills you need, and then put them back together so that it all works again. And it's actually pretty satisfying. You know, it's dirty work because cars are dirty. They're covered in oil and grease and dirt, and you know. But the main thing you're paying for that isn't necessarily the skill or the parts. It's labor. So if you look at any job on cars, most of what you're paying for is labor time, is the time of the people that are doing that. And the more complex a job, like a head gasket repair, a head gasket is actually a very simple repair on a car. You take off the cylinder head, you put a new gasket on, you put the cylinder head back on. It's not hard. And yet replacing that gasket will cost hundreds and hundreds of pounds. An actual gasket seal set is a 20, 30 quid price. It's all labor because it's a ball ache of a job. You know, it's time taking all those bits off and putting it all together. And it's the same with an airbrush. You know, the main thing is the time taking it all apart carefully so you don't damage anything, cleaning it, you know, being methodical, making sure it's all good. You know, especially cleaning a nozzle. Cleaning a nozzle probably takes as much time as everything else put together, because nozzles are very delicate as well. Making sure you don't lose the seals, putting everything back in the right order. You know, it's time. So, yeah, those of you who don't know, Pablo is a hairless Chinese crested, which is an African breed, actually, nothing to do with China. And this is one of the most commonly asked questions in the shop when Pablo is in as well. So if you look at the shape of him, so if you saw his head and everything, he looks like a little Anubis, and he goes absolutely black in the sun. You could probably saw the color of him. His actual skin color is pretty much the same as mine, right? It's just the amount of melanin he builds up in the sun is incredible, because he's got African origins, because he's designed to run around the sort of desert scrubland, getting little desert mice and things, which is why he has those huge ears. And he's sniffing again. Do you know we're talking about you? Hey, Pablo? Do you know we're talking about you? He's still looking for his mummy. Now, because of that, they can take as much heat, can't you? You can take all the heat in the world. You can take all the heat in the world. Yes, you can. Come on. Here he is. Here's Pablo. Here he is. Here we go. So, yeah, he can take all the heat you can give him. So he absolutely loves the sun. He'll sunbathe forever if he can. But he can't take the cold. They cannot take the cold. So even in 20-degree weather, they have to wear clothes because they don't have fur, because they're used to being outside and basking in the sun. Unlike other dogs, they do sweat. They have sweat glands. Most dogs don't. They cool down by panting. So his skin is a lot like ours. You can actually see that if I come up there. If I pull his little thing now, see, that's his actual skin color. And this is how dark he goes. That just shows the difference there. Hey, doesn't it? You silly boy. Yes. You can say hello to people. You say hello. He's not sure what's going on. And the reason his tongue is poking out the side there is because the genetics of the hairless condition that he has also give him a really bad dentition. So he doesn't have any front teeth apart from he's got one little peg tooth. Little peg tooth. So his tongue just lolls out the side because there's no teeth to stop it. So you're a good boy, aren't you? Mostly. Go on then. Here you go. So there we go. That's the Pablo aside, isn't it? Yes. He's now looking at me expectantly, like he deserves a treat or something. Territory sound like the same neighbour's dog. Yeah, he barked at me when I was in my own driveway. Yeah, that's very much. It's like a kind of assumed authority that they give themselves. Yeah. Did Jackson Pollock collaborate with Andy Warhol on designing Pablo's outfit? Yeah. Well, it kind of does suit bright colors, right? If you think of like bright African colors tend to work with dark skin tones, right? So, you know, if we put him in army greens and stuff, it wouldn't look great. So, oh dear, that would be a horrible mistake, I feel. You like little all-in-ones, don't you? Yes. Reference labor cost. You're paying for that person's experience and knowledge. Absolutely, you are. Yeah, and I wasn't trying to cast any aspersions on car mechanics. As I said, I did it with a couple of my friends for we did it for a couple of years. We had that business, and it's backbreaking work. You know, it's dirty. It's easy to get stuff wrong as well. So yeah, you are absolutely paying for the knowledge and stuff. But my point was the main cost that we pay as consumers for a car service, for instance, is time. Is that person's time, not in the oil that they're changing. The oil that they're changing costs what, 30 quid, like $40-50, whatever. But you're paying for them to run all the tests, to hook up all the equipment, paying for them to have the equipment, all that kind of things. Mr. Pablo. Well, Pablo Man, he is registered at the vets, so, which is a weird, because my surname is very Germanic, and obviously his name is very Spanish. Doesn't really sound right, does it? Pablo Man. Okay, I was going to show you how I did the masking for the wheels. These wheels for spraying. Let me just grab that a second because it's just over here. So to mask the wheels, the wheel hubs. So obviously I'd already painted and washed the hubs, so I didn't want to have to redo that. So I wanted to mask them. Masking circles can be a pain, but what I have, and I think I mentioned it last time, clear this off because I've got water on it for some reason, is this. And this is a really simple, actually pretty cheap piece of kit. This is a drill gauge. So it's made of steel. I'm not sure if it's stainless steel. It is stainless steel. It even says stainless steel on it. And it comes, it goes from 1 millimeter, which let's face it, is frankly too small to do anything with. But it goes all the way up to 10 millimeters in diameter. And so all I did, which you can see here, is I got some tummy masking tape. I sized up the hub, and I used this over the paper, and then just go around it with a scalpel. Just go around the outside with a scalpel. You might need to change the angle a couple of times to make sure that you're getting right up. But because it's stainless steel, you won't carve into it. So if it was aluminium, you might actually carve into it with the steel of a blade. And you can cut a circle, a nice round mask in any size. I actually started off with, I think it was a 7 on here. When I put it on, it wasn't quite big enough, so I actually went to a 7.5, which is another nice thing, better than a hole punch. Because some people use hole punches with those, which is great if it works. But the ability to be able to resize easily and quickly with one of these is really good. So I'd recommend, this is, I think they're like £3 or £4, for these, and you'll buy it once, unless you lose it. And you can also use it for sizing drill bits, which is what it's actually used for. So I think there's a lot of tools in not our hobby, but available, which aren't actually designed for this hobby, that are dual use, that are designed for something, but actually can be used for something else. You could use this the other way around as well, to cut a mask like this. To actually, spray the whole thing black and then mask everything with the hole, and then just spray the hub. You could actually use it directly, which I wouldn't recommend because then you get paint built up on it. But that's how I masked and painted the wheels. They do need a little bit of touch up because my sorry, my placement of the masks wasn't particularly accurate, but that's down to me rather than anything else. But it does make the painful process of painting wheels a lot easier, because touching up a couple of little bits on a wheel I find is far easier than doing a whole thing, especially because you got to wait for them to dry and all that kind of stuff. So that's how I did those. I still need to do the ones for the front, which are aluminium impregnated. The other thing, which I will be showing you on a video this next week, but I'll show you guys in advance, is this. This is great. This is one of my favorite new tools. This is just a little Velcro sanding thing, but it's made of foam, high density, hard foam. So it's quite rigid, but it has a little bit of give in it. And then you get these Velcro sanding pieces. This is 240. I've got them all the way from 80, because obviously this is not designed for modeling. So you've got 80, 120, which I've put to one side, and then 180 up to 800 to go on this. This is absolutely fantastic. If I didn't have this, sanding this beast would have been much, much more problematic and hard work. But this absolutely killed it. Really cheap. I'll show you where I got this from and how you can get them. It's become my new favorite tool. Just amazing. Just such a simple thing. So you can get slight curves with it, but it's good enough for flat surfaces. It's just great. Quite excited about that video actually, because I've got a little offer for you all, which some of you may not want it. Some of you may not like the provider, which I completely understand. But for those of you who do, I think it's a pretty good deal. Can't say anything more about it. It's actually done, but it's got to be approved. Let me just. It was World War II Dave. There we go. World War II scale model Dave. Yeah, a long-term member of the channel and stand-up guy who's been into the shop, who's lent me a Border Models 1/35 scale vehicle to help with my making the video on that. So you're not really late, Pavel. I started 2 hours earlier than my normal streams. Sorry, checking. I hear Maria has just come home, which is why Pablo is barking so much. Yeah, I mean, so soft cutting mats like this are good for some stuff. I often use a ceramic tile. So the other thing is you can get, laminate flooring and laminate tiles. I've got several of those, which I also use, which are harder than this, but not quite as hard as a ceramic tile. The great thing about all of those is you can get free samples. So it doesn't matter what country you're in, I don't think. Most flooring companies will provide free samples of flooring tiles and stuff, usually up to 3 or 4, because they want you to buy their flooring, right? And they come usually like they're about yay big, so more than enough for our purposes. I've often used them as like spraying backgrounds and this kind of stuff. So that's another good one. Hello. So Maria is back, as you can probably hear. She's back. Steve, Alex, do you happen to sell a rack for Tamiya 10mm paints? I do not. I do not. No. The best place I found to buy such a thing was sadly before Brexit. I think they're called Hobby Zone. They're a Polish company, I think. I think it's Hobby Zone. Hobby Zone paint rack. Yes, Hobby Zone. They do a whole range of paint things. Now you can get them in the UK from various like retailers, but it depends. Depends on what you're looking for. And so let me just show you this. Here we go. So here's one. They're modular. They have little magnets in so they can all stick together. That's our security system just telling you. So this is for 26mm bottles. I can't remember what Tamiya ones are. I think they're like 38, something like that. I think. So yeah, have a look, see if you can find them. They're really good. Made of MDF, obviously laser cut, but I used to get them direct from Hobby Zone, but it's just too expensive with postage now, generally, unless you're buying a lot of stuff. As far as ceramic tap, yep, B&Q, any hardware store, they often will have, again, the sale pile where they're getting rid of, X display stuff, and you can pick up a pack of tiles for basically nothing, a pound, couple of pounds. Model 2 scale model Dave also says EBMA Hobby also does similar racks. Funny enough, the racks I have for Outlaw paints were bespoke from EBMA. Let's see if we can find EBMA paint racks. Yeah, there we go. So they do these. So they do vertical ones. Yeah, 36mm. Those are for, yeah, Mr. Hobby Guns and Sango. So if you look for a 36mm paint rack, these are the ones that you want. So depending on whether you want vertical or horizontal storage, obviously the verticals are designed to put on a wall, ideally. I think they've only got the vertical racks actually there. But 36mm paint rack is what you want. Yeah, the hobby zone ones are the ones that that I had, mainly for Vallejo size paints. Sorry, let's stop showing that. For these size paints, because as you can probably tell with this, Formula P3 paints do not come in these bottles. I reformatted all of mine. Yeah, Vallejo. Even my Tamiya paints are in these bottles. Not this one, because this is a new one. I haven't reformatted it yet. Thanks for membership. Was just wondering how that happened. Yeah, Dave is the guy to thank. Yeah, Hobby Zone do entire like systems. So I have some drawers of theirs. They're all the same size, so you can like stack them all together and like create a big piece. They also have these large format racks, which are the ones that I have, because you can get 72 paints to a rack, I think it is. I need 2 more really. Which I won't say that I've got a problem with paint, but yeah, I need quite a lot. Okay, so this is, I think, pretty much dried now. So you can see it's a lot more even now it's dried. It still needs a bit of touching up. I'm not sure if that's dry or not. I'm not going to touch it too much. But that is where we are at. So pretty much painted. Pretty much. So I think, obviously, I'll go ahead and touch it up and even out where we have got some unevenness. Give it a coat of pledge when needed, and whack some decals on it. And we'll have to have a grand reveal and see what you guys think. But I think I'm going to call it there, and wish you all a very good evening. Thanks for coming and joining me, and hopefully see you tomorrow night on FX and Chill if you're around. Other than that, have a great evening, and I'll see you again. Okay, cheers, guys.